Yuta, a laid-back high schooler, is tired of girls using him to get close to his handsome brother. After being burned too many times, he's sworn off trusting them. But one persistent classmate keeps greeting him every morning until his patience snaps. When he finally snaps back with a greeting of his own, things take an unexpected turn. Yuta finds himself flustered by Hoju, the charming classmate everyone adores, yet he's convinced she actually likes his brother. Cute, smart, athletic, and impossible to read, she only makes things harder for him. One moment she brushes him off, the next she leans in to ask about his favorite bread, leaving him scrambling for an answer. Even after she walks away with her friends, he can't shake the way she lingers in his thoughts. Later on the basketball court, his buddies echo what everyone already thinks. Hoju is mysterious, talented, and maybe a little too distracting for Yuta's peace of mind. She takes a bold shot, misses, but laughs it off, while Yuta and his friends can't help noticing how cute she looks. When a friend teases Yuta about liking her, he brushes it off, until Hoju gives him a sly smile that unsettles him. She's unpredictable, leaving him wondering if she might actually like him. Just then, someone suddenly calls out Rai-sama, startling everyone. Hoju hands Rai-sama a notebook, instantly stirring jealous whispers from the girls who assume she's a new first year. As always, they swarm Rai-sama, ignoring and even trampling Yuta in the process. He's used to it. Every girl who pretends to like him is really just after his brother. But this time is different. Hoju stops, offers Yuta a handkerchief, and when he asks why she isn't chasing Rai-sama, she simply replies that she's found him. She playfully insists he keep her favorite handkerchief, teasing him with a sweet smile as he nervously accepts. Though Yuta suspects she likes his brother, he quickly shuts down the thought. He won't be fooled again. Later, Hoju reunites with her friend, who's practically buzzing with excitement. Yuta's older brother appeared, instantly drawing everyone's attention. The girls lit up at his handsome look, whispers spreading quickly through the hallway. The rumor echoed everywhere that Tohina's brother dared to attend the same school. Yuta sat at his desk listening to the constant praise for his brother. Every compliment and sigh only fueled the irritation he had carried for years. That pain had long ago hardened into a single unbroken rule he lived by. He was a high school boy who could never trust girls. They only came to use him as a way to get close to his older brother, never for who he truly was. So he decided long ago that no matter how kind they seemed, he would never trust them again. Izumi walked into the classroom, already in a bad mood. Seeing her only made it worse. She always found ways to irritate him. He snapped, telling her not to greet him, then noticed she was sitting in his seat and pointed it out. She ignored his remark and casually suggested splitting it, leaning back with a playful air as if daring him to take the spot. He snapped, raising his voice that he couldn't sit like that, but she ignored him as if he didn't matter. Soon, the other students noticed her, whispering openly about how beautiful she looked. Yuta noticed how easily she drew attention and assumed she only talked to him to get closer to his brother. Still, something about her unsettled him, especially the odd detail in her hair. As she leaned over his notebook, she asked if he was writing in his journal and remarked that he seemed confident. He was caught off guard when a girl announced the math quiz. Confused, he looked at his paper and saw a score of 50 out of 5. Despair hit him as the teacher reminded the class that anyone with 10 points or less had to retake the test the next day. Yuta's friend laughed, bragging he scored 50 out of 40. Annoyed, Yuta thought of going home to study but ended up in the library instead. In the heavy silence, he worked through math problems, trying different approaches. Yet no matter how hard he tried, the concept refused to make sense, leaving him frustrated. Izumi suddenly appeared beside him and pointed out a mistake in his work. Startled and irritated, he demanded to know why she was there. She calmly covered his ear to quiet him, making him realize how loud he had been in the silent library. Embarrassed, he quickly covered his own mouth. She casually remarked on his studying, leaving Yuta surprised to see her in the library. He always pictured her in a cafe, not with a book in hand. Then he noticed the title, "The Most Beautiful Girl in School is Flirting with Me, so I almost got the wrong idea." For a moment he wondered if she liked him, but quickly brushed the thought aside. She suddenly sat beside him, making him tense. Noticing his empty notebook, she pointed it out, leaving him caught off guard. Then she handed him her quiz paper. As he looked at it, he remembered Takaya once saying Izumi was actually smart. He realized she was talented despite seeming distracted in class. She never paid attention yet always kept up with ease. Annoyed, he told her not to do whatever she wanted and demanded her results. Calmly, she showed her paper minus 50 out of 50. The perfect score left him stunned. Realizing she was the truly talented one, he grew annoyed and asked why she showed him the paper. She reminded him he had asked and offered to teach. After a pause, he agreed, and she calmly guided him through each problem with confidence. He asked her to check his answers, and she agreed without hesitation, setting her novel aside. To his surprise, she had been reading while teaching him. Leaning closer, she reviewed his work with care, then smiled and told him everything was correct. The words left him stunned, as if his soul had floated out of his body. Before he could react, a boy entered the library calling his name. In that moment, Yuta pictured tomorrow, against all odds, he would score perfectly. The following day, Yuta's mind wandered to thoughts of his class. He was still in his first year of high school, a stage of life that felt both new and uncertain. Yet that afternoon, he found himself far from the classroom, standing in the middle of a store. The aisles were busy with shoppers. Bright lights reflected off glossy packaging, and every shelf seemed to be overflowing with goods. But as Yuta scanned the small white price tags beneath each item, a wave of disbelief hit him. The numbers were high, much higher than he remembered. Prices felt outrageous, unreasonably steep compared to the last time he had been here. Even the most ordinary items carried a cost that made him hesitate. He thought to himself that wages must have increased significantly to match these prices, though it didn't make them any less overwhelming. Only someone with a comfortable amount of money, he figured, could walk through here and fill their basket without a second thought. Then, in the middle of his quiet calculations, movement in the corner of his eye made him pause. There she was, Izumi, appearing in the same section of the store, reaching for groceries. The suddenness of it caught him off guard. For a moment, his mind stalled, unsure how to react. She noticed him too, her presence as casual as if they had simply met in the hallway at school. She said something that questioned why he was there, but Yuta didn't let the attention stay on himself. Instead, he turned the question back toward her, asking about her own reasons. She replied that she was here for shopping as well, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. Seeing her here, away from school, felt strangely different. She wasn't in her usual uniform, and the casual clothes she wore gave her a more relaxed appearance. There was something fresh about the sight of her like this. It even crossed his mind that she looked cute. The thought struck him hard and sudden, making him mentally pull back in alarm. Why was he even thinking that? She was only getting into his head again. His attention shifted when he spotted a display of cookies nearby. He asked her if she was still working through her grocery list. She glanced at what he had in his basket, then asked about what was on his list. When he compared, it was obvious her choices didn't match what she had originally come for at all. He told himself, and her, that she could get the snack later, but for now she should set it back. Watching her shop, he realized he couldn't begin to guess what was going through her mind. She was unpredictable, and her actions didn't seem to follow any logical pattern. Then he noticed something in her expression, a faint, unreadable look, and questioned it in his thoughts. There was no ice cream listed among her groceries, yet she was holding some. He insisted she hand it over, unwilling to let the small inconsistency slide. The two of them continued down the aisles like that, their conversation weaving between them, sometimes soft, sometimes carrying the tone of a playful argument. At one point, she gave him a small, almost teasing expression and thanked him. The moment passed quickly, replaced by the rhythm of their shopping. Without realizing it, Yuta had managed to find all the items he needed. What surprised him was the way he had behaved. He had been more considerate toward her than usual. That wasn't something he expected from himself, not when it came to her. Still, the errand was complete. She gave him another easy thank you and told him she would see him later. He returned the farewell, but inside he was still wondering how it had turned out this way, helping her with groceries of all people. She was the one who usually got under his skin, not someone he imagined spending time with in this manner. On the way home, the unexpected continued. A passerby glanced at them and asked if she was his girlfriend. The question made his thoughts scatter for a moment, and he hurried to deny it, clarifying that she was nothing more than his classmate. A moment later, his aunt made a similar remark, observing that the two of them seemed to be enjoying themselves. Her words lingered in his mind as he walked. He realized he had never actually seen Izumi laugh, not once. The thought drifted toward imagining what her laughter might sound like, what it might look like on her face. But the image he conjured wasn't of her laughing with him, it was of her laughing with his brother. That idea left a faint discomfort in his chest. The discomfort only deepened when a memory surfaced. It was her voice from before, saying she was only speaking to him as a way to get closer to his brother. The reminder felt sharp, yet it didn't erase the quiet, conflicting thought that he might want to see her smile for real someday. He shut the thought down, reminding himself that he would never allow himself to be tricked again. That wasn't something he would find amusing anymore. At the very least, he could take comfort in having saved some money on the shopping trip. The next time they crossed paths, it was under different circumstances. Rain was falling steadily, and she had forgotten her umbrella. At first, Yuta told himself this had nothing to do with him. But the sight of her standing there, unprotected from the rain, lingered in his mind. Eventually, he found himself holding out his own umbrella. A faint warmth crept across his face as he did so. He told her she might catch a cold otherwise and added that he was offering it willingly. She didn't say anything in response. Instead, she simply looked at him, her eyes steady. The next thing he knew, they were walking side by side, both under that same umbrella. Raindrops tapped softly on the canopy above them, the sound blending with the quiet between them. Inwardly, Yuta noted the odd turn of events. He had only meant to give her the umbrella, yet here they were, walking home together. He thought about how most girls would have declined such close company under a small umbrella, but Azumi didn't complain. She walked without hesitation, her eyes often glancing toward him, her lips faintly curved. He noticed her closeness, the way the umbrella forced them into a space smaller than he was comfortable with. It was clearly built for one person, yet they made it work. Still, just thinking about their closeness left him uneasy. Then, without warning, a car sped past on the street beside them. Its tires tore through a puddle, sending a wave of murky water splashing toward them. It happened again, and again, and again, 4 times in quick succession. Yuta reacted instinctively, stepping forward to shield her. The cold, dirty water struck his clothes, soaking through, but he stood firm, making sure she remained untouched. She looked at him then, asking if he was all right. He said he was fine for now and kept walking. His eyes drifted to the umbrella. It had become practically useless. He adjusted it in an attempt to shield himself from the rain, but the movement only caused the water gathered along its edge to pour down over both of them, soaking them further. The unexpected splash made her laugh, bright, sudden, and genuine. She teased him about what exactly he thought he was doing. He gave a brief apology, but inside he felt caught by the sound of her laughter. Her smile lingered in his mind. He tried to tell himself it wasn't what he thought, yet the warmth in his face betrayed him. She thanked him again for stepping in earlier and keeping her dry. In his thoughts, Yuta decided she was the type to laugh at strange, unpredictable moments, a trait that made her difficult to read and worth keeping a cautious distance from. As they reached the point where their paths split, she reminded him to take care of himself unless he wanted to end up with a cold. With that, she walked away into the rain, leaving him standing there beneath the dripping umbrella, the air still carrying the faint echo of her laughter. The next day arrived, bringing with it one of those small but inevitable events of school life, the seat exchange. For Yuta, it immediately turned into a situation he would have preferred to avoid. Fate, or perhaps cruel coincidence, had placed Azumi, the one person he remained most cautious of, directly in the seat beside him. This was unusual. In all their time as classmates, she had never ended up sitting so close to him. Yet now she was there, looking at him with a suspicious gaze that made his irritation rise. In his mind, he questioned why she had chosen to sit next to him. To him, this could only be some kind of trap, a move that had been waiting for the moment of the seating change. Still, Yuta tried to turn the situation into something more useful. Rather than viewing it purely as misfortune, he decided it might be his chance. If he played it right, he could learn more about Azumi, perhaps even peel back the layers of her carefully maintained image. But before he could make any progress, she leaned in slightly toward him. Her gaze remained steady, and the closeness made him stiffen. When he questioned her expression, her answer was strange. She claimed to be looking at the mountains in the distance. Her tone was calm, as though the explanation needed no further context. Confused, Yuta could not understand what she meant. She went on to explain that some people believed looking at nature from afar was good for them, and that this was something people often whispered about. She wondered if he had ever heard it before. Yuta sat there, bewildered. He admitted to himself that he had no idea what was going through her mind. Part of him thought she must be pursuing some hidden motive, perhaps even connected to his brother. Another part wondered if she was simply an unusually unique girl. She was the opposite of him in every visible way. Bright, confident, talented, and popular, while he stood apart, very different. Yet despite those differences, she continued to act toward him in ways he could not explain. Then, without warning, she placed a small object in his hands. It was a tiny pig figurine. She commented on how cute it was, suggesting that it even resembled him. The implication made Yuta frown. He dismissed the comparison immediately. Around them, the class erupted in laughter at his blunt rejection. The sound filled the room, but for Yuta, irritation was what lingered. In the end, he realized that all of this had been a pointless circle. He had started the day thinking he could uncover something about Azumi, but the reality was far less satisfying. He didn't want to step blindly into whatever chaos she might lead him to. He thought to himself that most people who ended up seated next to him probably had no idea what they were getting into. And yet he could not help but wonder again, what exactly was she thinking? As his mind wandered, he imagined an almost dreamy scene around her, a world of light and sparkle that seemed to follow her everywhere. But the vision changed abruptly when he saw her wearing glasses. The shift caught him off guard. They suited her surprisingly well, making her look both intelligent and unexpectedly cute. The sight left his mouth slightly open, his eyes widening in surprise. She noticed his stare and asked what was wrong. He learned that her eyesight wasn't perfect. Though it wasn't usually a problem, she explained that sitting far from the board made it necessary for her to wear glasses. She liked them, she said, and they helped her focus. Her reasoning was simple and matter-of-fact. Yuta had no clever response, just mild amazement. He quietly acknowledged that her explanation made perfect sense. It even brought to mind a childhood memory. They had once spent time playing in places like the forest, and she had mentioned wanting to see the mountains. If her eyesight was truly that poor, Yuta thought, then perhaps a seat closer to the front would suit her better. But his thoughts had drifted too far. When he returned to reality, he realized the class had ended and the teacher was already gone. He had not paid attention to a single word of the lesson. The possibility occurred to him that Izumi might have been giving him genuine answers earlier, without any hidden agenda. If so, it was ironic he had been so focused on deciphering her that he had missed the actual class entirely. As students packed away their things, Yuta glanced at her from the corner of his eye. What he saw left him momentarily stunned. With the glasses still in place, she looked almost like a flawless model. She adjusted them with a small, confident movement, and her lips curved into a subtle smile. A faint warmth reached Yuta's face. To him, it seemed as though she was enjoying the effect she was having on him. Still, he told himself he would only take her words at face value this time. He asked why she had not requested to switch seats with someone else if her eyesight was so bad. Her answer was simple: she liked sitting here. That was all. Yuta's mind stalled at her words. He could not read her. The mystery of her thoughts only deepened. She stood from her seat, preparing to step outside. Nearby, some of Yuta's friends arrived, asking if he wanted to join them. They also called out to Izumi, but Yuta barely heard them. His mind was crowded with questions about her true intentions. Could it be that she really chose this seat simply because she wanted to? The next day, the pattern continued. In class, Izumi kept staring at him, just as she always seemed to do. Finally, he asked her why she kept looking at him that way. She offered no reply. His attention drifted to her hands. Every time she opened her pencil case, her expression changed. There was a spark of quiet happiness in her eyes, almost like a child with a small secret. It made him wonder what she kept inside that case. There had to be something in there that brought her that small joy. Before he could give it more thought, one of her friends approached. The girl asked what Izumi was doing, then suggested that going outside would be more fun. The interruption was abrupt, breaking the small bubble of curiosity Yuta had been wrapped in. He sighed inwardly, thinking that another bothersome girl had entered the scene. Around them, other students whispered to each other, admiring Izumi's presence. Some called her dazzling and cute. Another girl chimed in that she loved that about her. Yuta remained silent through it all. He said nothing, simply watching the scene without adding a word. The next morning broke with a soft glow over the horizon, signaling the start of a planned holiday trip. The air carried the freshness of early daylight, filled with the faint scent of dew and the chirping of distant birds. The class buzzed with anticipation, ready to enjoy a carefree day in the open. Shoes shuffled, bags were checked, and conversations rippled through the air like an eager tide. But in the midst of all this energy, Yuta sat apart, unmoved by the excitement around him. While others prepared with laughter and chatter, he remained at his desk with a book in his hands, his eyes fixed firmly on the pages. He turned each one slowly, as if the unfolding story in print was the only world worth visiting that day. The trip might have sounded like fun for most of the class, but for him, there was no interest, no spark that made him want to join. From across the room, Izumi's gaze found him. She stood still for a moment, simply watching him as though expecting some sudden change of heart. There was a faint trace of curiosity in her expression, maybe even a silent question, but Yuta didn't meet her eyes for long. In his mind, her quiet stare meant little. She might be eager to participate in the games and activities, but that didn't mean she was planning to do it with him. He recalled that she had asked him something earlier, but his answer had been vague at best, and he had no plans to elaborate. Before that silence could stretch too far, a lively group of friends gathered around Izumi. They wrapped their arms around her playfully, pulling her into their circle with an infectious energy. Their laughter was warm, their voices urging her to join in. Yuta, still planted in his seat, glanced at the scene and thought of the purpose behind the day's events. The trip wasn't just about play. It was meant to be an outdoor learning experience, a chance to embrace the natural world, and, perhaps most importantly, an opportunity to strengthen bonds within the class. Around him, students were already stepping into that spirit, breathing in the crisp air, taking in the sight of the greenery, and enjoying the easy feeling that came with leaving the confines of the classroom. But for Yuta, the thought of blending into their energy only deepened the sense of unease. He felt no desire to be part of that lively thread of activity. Still, one detail softened the situation. Izumi had been assigned to his group. That, at least, was better than being placed with some of the other girls he knew. Not long after, one of his friends approached him with an announcement. Roles were being assigned for the curry-making activity later in the day. Everyone had to participate in a small competition, the results of which would decide their duties. The rules were straightforward. Whoever won could choose whether to cook, while those who didn't win would be responsible for gathering firewood. Someone in the group, with a mischievous grin, shared a story about a senior student's warning. Firewood duty, they claimed, was nothing short of brutal. The remark struck Yuta with a spark of irritation. The idea of being stuck with the most exhausting task on the trip didn't sit well with him. In that moment, he decided there was no way he could allow himself to lose. But fate didn't share his resolve. Only a short while later, the teams reached their destination and the results were clear. Yuta found himself with a heavy bundle of firewood resting against his shoulder, and there, walking alongside him, was Izumi, also on firewood duty. The sight puzzled him. Why hadn't she been placed with the cooking team? Her explanation was simple. He had come in dead last, and she had placed just one spot above him, second to last. The reason didn't entirely convince him. She could have chosen to join the cooking group, but instead she was here, almost as if she had made the decision to follow him simply because of his loss. The suspicion lingered in his thoughts. The work was harder than he'd anticipated. The slope they had to climb was steep, and each step sent a slow burn into his legs. The bundle of wood dug into his hands and shoulders, and the air, though fresh, felt heavier with each breath. Around them, other students strained under the same burden, moving carefully so as not to drop their loads. At one point, Yuta looked back and caught sight of Izumi gathering more wood. She was struggling, her movements lacking the rhythm of someone used to physical work, yet there was something undeniably cute about the way she worked, like a kitten pretending to be fierce. She almost seemed to believe the hardest part of the job had already been done. He couldn't help but stare, caught between mild amusement and reluctant admiration. A voice pulled him from his thoughts. A female classmate had approached, asking if he was all right and reminding him to speak up if he needed help. He nodded, assuring her he was fine, though his attention quickly drifted back to Izumi. The rest of their teammates remained busy, moving through the undergrowth and collecting what they could. Then, without warning, Izumi appeared directly in front of him, leaning close. The sudden proximity made him startle, his thoughts scattering. She explained that she had simply caught up to him, but his mind was already turning over another observation. She wasn't built for this kind of labor. He offered to take her load, but she refused, holding onto the wood with both hands. She didn't seem to realize that he was only trying to help. The refusal was stubborn, but the stubbornness itself carried a charm that made him hesitate. His words faltered, his sentence breaking before he told her to move faster, warning that they might miss out on the curry entirely if they took too long. She smiled at him then, a small but genuine curve of her lips, and thanked him for the help. When they reached the cooking site, the mood shifted instantly. The curry that had been prepared was a mess. Its appearance alone was discouraging. A few students tried to joke that it could still be called curry, but the truth was obvious. Then came the smell, sharp, unpleasant, and out of place. Following it, they discovered a bottle labeled as a secret ingredient. Izumi held it out to Yuta, and his expression twisted in disbelief. He suspected that someone had actually poured its contents into the pot. The thought was enough to frustrate him, and he told her to be cautious with certain ingredients. Deciding that the situation couldn't be salvaged without a fresh start, Yuta took control. He rolled up his sleeves and began preparing a new batch. Somewhere behind him, a girl whispered that he was actually good at cooking. The comment barely reached him. His focus was on the steady rhythm of chopping, stirring, and seasoning. When the food was ready, he served it out to the waiting group. The first taste brought smiles to their faces, and a murmur of approval spread through the camp. Even Yuta took a bite, finding that the infamous secret ingredient had, against all odds, improved the flavor. It was unexpectedly satisfying. Across the group, Izumi tried the curry. Her smile as she ate was warm and unguarded, and she called it delicious. The expression caught him completely off guard. He froze, the heat in his cheeks rising fast. His eyes caught on a small grain of rice clinging to her skin, and he pointed it out. She brushed at it quickly. The moment lingered in his mind. He couldn't quite place why her compliment made him feel oddly happy. Was it simply pride in his cooking, or something else entirely? Whatever it was, he found himself thinking about her more than he wanted to admit. Before his thoughts could wander further, a group of students arrived with new energy. They announced that the taser hunting game was about to begin, this time as a mountain edition. Anyone interested was welcome to join. The announcement made both Yuta and Izumi pause. The words were strange, the concept unexpected. The very name of the game raised questions, and as they exchanged glances, a single thought echoed in both of their minds. What exactly was this hunting game supposed to be? The treasure hunt began with the guide giving clear instructions. Everyone was told to use the map to navigate with their group, solving puzzles along the way. The promise was simple: answer the puzzles correctly, and they might discover real treasure. The guide's voice carried enthusiasm, pushing them to get moving without delay. One participant read the first task aloud from the paper. If they headed up the marked path, they would find the first question. The excitement in the group grew instantly. Another student exclaimed in pure thrill that the treasure must be 1,000,000 yen, repeating the number as though saying it would make it real. Yuta, however, kept his thoughts to himself. There was no way it was actually 1,000,000 yen. It sounded far too good to be true. Before he could dwell on it, Izumi pointed towards something in the distance. She suggested they head there without hesitation. Yuta called after her, wondering if she was really going to keep pace with them. The others seemed to have boundless energy, racing ahead. Izumi, walking at a far slower pace, insisted that she was moving just fine. Yuta thought her pace hardly qualified as walking at all. Still, he noticed there was something about her that felt off today, a subtle change in her mood or behavior. From across the group, someone shouted both Izumi and Yuta's names. A girl hurried over, telling Yuta there was a puzzle board nearby. He turned his attention toward it. The board's question was strange. It asked what Miss Kobayashi did on her day off when there was no school and she had the freedom to scoff. Nearby, another board listed 3 possible answers: aerobics, bowling, or wrestling. Yuta stared at it in disbelief. There was no way they could know the answer. A teammate reminded him to think carefully, stressing that the supposed 1,000,000 yen prize depended on it. They considered whether there might be a hint hidden in the area. Yuta still felt it was impossible to figure out. Before the discussion could drag on, someone confidently announced they had the answer. Izumi spoke up, saying it was bowling. She remembered Miss Kobayashi mentioning it during class one day. The group turned to her in surprise and admiration. Staying awake in Miss Kobayashi's lessons was an accomplishment in itself. Izumi, pleased with herself, asked Yuta for praise. He gave her a quick acknowledgement, calling it impressive. Another classmate added that without Izumi's input, they would have failed the very first puzzle. She thanked them casually, and Yuta thought to himself that maybe she seemed perfectly fine after all. They continued on the trail, solving puzzle after puzzle. A teammate noted how many they had completed already. Feeling confident that the end must be near, the idea of the 1,000,000 yen prize kept their energy high, and they moved forward quickly. Yuta noticed something concerning. Izumi was no longer with the group. When asked, a teammate explained that she had gone to get some water. With only 10 minutes left in the game, her absence felt unusually long. The guide's voice called out again, encouraging everyone to keep up the pace. The group began to worry. Even if she had gone to get water, she wouldn't have wandered far. Someone muttered that perhaps she had gotten lost. While they weren't certain, they admitted it wasn't impossible given Izumi's absent-minded tendencies. Yuta's thoughts lingered on her. She could be unpredictable, and it wouldn't be strange if she had ended up off track. Another classmate announced they were thirsty too and would go get water. Yuta decided to act, telling the others to go on without him while he searched for her. They warned him to be careful. Izumi, they reminded him, could be spacey, and no one ever really knew what she was thinking. Yuta felt it was better to be safe than sorry. Not long after, he spotted her. Calling out, he made his way to her side. She greeted him by name, but he couldn't help asking what she was doing so far away from the others. She explained that she had seen a sign claiming there was treasure down a certain path and decided to follow it. Yuta sighed internally. This was just like her. He told her the others had gone ahead and that they needed to catch up. Inwardly, he felt relieved. At least she hadn't been lost after all. As they started moving, he noticed something unusual in her gait. She seemed to be favoring one foot. When he asked about it, she appeared surprised that he had noticed. He explained that she had been acting strangely all day and that he had put the pieces together. He asked why she hadn't told anyone. It could be dangerous to keep going like that. Izumi admitted the reason. She had been looking forward to coming along with everyone so much that she didn't want to slow the group down. Yuta was caught off guard. He had always thought she was the kind of person you couldn't read, but now she was wearing such a clear, open expression. He told her it was a childish thing to say. She apologized immediately, telling him she was sorry. He brushed it off, telling her it was fine, but since it was an emergency, she didn't need to hide it. He ended up carrying her. She asked if she was too heavy, but he told her she was far too light and should eat more. She laughed, saying she had eaten 2 servings of curry earlier. The curry had been great, she added, and the treasure hunt had been a lot of fun with everyone. Yuta observed that the blisters must have come from the brand new shoes she had been so excited to wear that morning. He told her he had been joking earlier about her being unreadable, because now she seemed surprisingly easy to read. She tilted her head at his comment, but before he could elaborate, she softly thanked him for coming to find her. In that moment, Yuta reflected on his opinion of her. He had once thought of Izumi as a girl he couldn't trust, but perhaps she was far simpler than he had imagined. He found himself wanting to believe in her, even if it was just a little. Eventually, they caught up to the rest of the group. Everyone had made it to the treasure safely. The guide revealed the prize. It wasn't 1,000,000 yen after all. It was 10 copies of a classical problems workbook. The group stared at the pile of books in disbelief. Some complained about the missing money. Someone joked that Yuta should take them all home, but he refused, saying he already owned one. He told them to give one to Izumi instead. With that, the group turned and began the walk back, the treasure hunt complete, but with memories they wouldn't soon forget. It turned out Izumi was actually injured. Yuta quickly admitted fault, feeling a pang of guilt. Izumi questioned him, asking where exactly the injury was. Upon closer look, it was clear the wound was fairly bad. She wondered why he hadn't realized it sooner, and he asked why she hadn't told anyone about it. As they spoke, Yuta's attention was caught by something nearby, a lazy dog. He was surprised to see one there, remarking on the sight. Izumi teased him for his sharp eyes, but he replied that he would rather not have seen it at all. The memory shifted to the day before the field trip. Izumi recalled a moment when someone had excitedly told her a certain thing was really good. She remembered thinking about both Yuta and her friend at that time. Later on the bus ride home, she reflected on the day. She hadn't managed to hand out the snacks she had prepared, a small gesture she had planned from the start. Still, she quietly saved one as a little thank you for Yuta, holding onto it as the bus carried them back from their trip. It was a small but meaningful end to a day filled with unexpected moments. It was a bright morning when a cheerful greeting reached Hasegawa-chan. She returned the greeting with her usual polite tone. Another classmate noticed her early arrival and asked if she had committee work again so early in the day. Hasegawa-chan admitted that she did, but quickly added that she had already completed it. As she moved across the hallway, she spotted a boy struggling to carry something heavy. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and offered her help. The boy looked surprised by her offer, asking cautiously if she was sure she wanted to assist. A short distance away, a group of boys watched her closely. Their admiration was obvious as they whispered among themselves, commenting on how she looked as cute as ever that morning. To them, she was the perfect beauty, flawless in appearance, graceful in her actions, and in their eyes, possessing an almost untouchable charm. They even hinted at other qualities they admired but did not say aloud. Hasegawa-chan, embarrassed by their remarks, turned toward them sharply and told them to stop. She pointed out that they were making too much of the scene and were in danger of bothering Yuta-senpai. With a shift in her tone, she looked directly at Yuta and offered an apology. Rai-sama, always calm and composed, simply reassured her that it was fine and thanked her without hesitation. Those watching noticed something unusual. Hasegawa-chan didn't seem to show any particular interest in Rai-sama. To them, this made her even more impressive, as most girls were quick to show excitement around him. However, inside her mind, Hasegawa-chan's reaction told an entirely different story. She was completely taken aback by how amazing Rai-sama smelled. His sudden appearance in her classroom that morning had been a shock, but it had also filled her with excitement. Being able to speak with him directly, to exchange words and see him smile at her, had felt like a dream come true. Simply watching him from afar was no longer enough for her. She wanted something more, something deeper. Later, she opened her diary and began writing down her thoughts. She reflected that she had already gathered a significant amount of information about Rai-sama's school life, his habits during class, his activities, and his general routine. But that wasn't enough for her anymore. What she wanted now was to know the real Rai-sama, to learn about the parts of his life that others didn't see. Her plan was straightforward. She would get close to his younger brother, Yuta. Through him, she could gather details about Rai-sama's private life. In her mind, she pictured herself in what she called her determined twin-tail mode, a mental image of herself completely focused and ready to execute her mission. When she approached Yuta, she started with a simple question, asking if he had finished his homework. Yuta answered that he still had a little left to do. Trying to be helpful, she offered to let him copy hers, but he refused politely. Her attempt had not gone as planned, so she tried to keep the conversation going. She commented on how warm the day felt and suggested closing the curtains to block the sunlight. Yuta responded casually that the temperature felt fine to him, leaving her without a path forward. Inside, she was growing irritated. In her experience, most boys would have been delighted to spend time talking with a cute girl like her. Yet Yuta seemed completely unfazed by her presence. She had assumed he would be an easy target for her plan, but now she wasn't so sure. Her thoughts turned to another problem, Izumi. Izumi seemed like a possible rival for Rai-sama's attention and had been spending more time with Yuta lately. This made Hasegawa-chan suspicious, and she decided to eavesdrop on their conversation, hoping to find something that could help her. She observed Izumi asking Yuta whether he had brought a bento that day. Yuta admitted that he had, explaining it was simply leftovers from dinner the night before. Hasegawa-chan quickly made a mental note of this, thinking that any detail, no matter how small, might be useful. But Izumi's response was simply a casual remark of approval. This annoyed Hasegawa-chan deeply. If Izumi was a fan of Rai-sama too, she was hiding it well, and her calm attitude made it difficult for Hasegawa-chan to read her intentions. Hasegawa-chan decided to redirect the conversation herself, asking Yuta what kinds of side dishes he liked. Almost immediately, she realized this line of questioning was pointless for her goal. Learning about Yuta's food preferences wasn't going to bring her any closer to Rai-sama. Meanwhile, Izumi noted that her own tastes seemed similar to Yuta's, which only made Yuta more suspicious. In his mind, he wondered whether Izumi's interest was simply a way to get his lunch. The possibility that she might have other motives crossed his mind as he studied her expression. By the end of the exchange, Hasegawa-chan had to admit she had learned nothing of value. The entire effort had resulted in her gathering more information about Yuta and Izumi than about Rai-sama himself. The frustration was palpable. All she wanted was to be near him, to know him better, to share even the smallest pieces of his life. In her imagination, she pictured herself standing beside Rai-sama as if they were already together. It was a warm and vivid image, but it was still only a fantasy. She shook off the thought and reminded herself that she could not give up now. She was certain that Yuta and Izumi were hiding some important information about Rai-sama. The next time she had the opportunity, she was determined to uncover it. The school day eventually gave way to evening, and she returned home with her mind still turning over her plans. At the same time, Yuta arrived back at his own home. Rai-sama greeted him with a calm welcome, his voice carrying a natural warmth. Yuta looked at his older brother and made an observation. If the people at school could see him like this, they would be shocked beyond belief. Rai-sama's only reaction was to turn toward him and respond with a simple question, leaving his younger brother to wonder just how much more there was to learn about the real person behind the admired image. Hinaji Hasegawa was known as the ever-reliable class representative, bright, bubbly, and always at the center of attention. To her classmates, she was the perfect leader, approachable, dependable, and effortlessly sociable. Beneath that flawless exterior, however, she hid a secret. She was a slightly intense, completely devoted Rai-sama fanatic. One afternoon, a light-hearted classroom conversation turned to the topic of favorite bento side dishes. Izumi casually asked Yuta what he liked most in his lunch. After thinking for a moment, Yuta replied that tamagoyaki might be his favorite. Izumi responded enthusiastically, saying she liked it too and wished she could eat some right then. Yuta added that he also enjoyed sausages, though they were more time-consuming to prepare. Once again, Izumi agreed, saying she wanted to eat those as well. To Hasegawa, Rai-sama was like a figure surrounded by blooming roses, radiating elegance, charm, and an almost untouchable aura whenever he appeared. His presence felt refined and captivating, as if the atmosphere itself became more graceful around him. But outside of school, that image changed entirely. At home, the polished image vanished. Yuta once glanced at Rai-sama and asked what was going on with his hair, noting how different he looked. The roses that bloomed at school seemed to wilt in private, revealing an unpolished, ordinary side of him, a version only those close to him would ever see. Lately, life around Yuta had been more chaotic than usual. It wasn't that things had ever been particularly calm, but recently, the pace of events seemed relentless. The scorching heat of summer only made matters worse, pressing down like an invisible weight that drained energy from everyone. The school's latest assignment didn't help. Out of all possible tasks they could have been given, their class had drawn the short straw, pulling. Sweat clung to Yuta's forehead as he worked his way down the schoolyard, hands brushing through the stubborn patches of grass. His patience was already wearing thin when a cheerful voice broke through the afternoon air. Hasegawa appeared beside him, her expression as bright as always, offering to help him with his share of the work. Yuta didn't even hesitate before refusing. He insisted he was fine and didn't need help. But Hasegawa, with her boundless energy, tilted her head and replied that they were friends, weren't they? The words left him momentarily silent. Inwardly, she was wondering since when that had ever been true, but outwardly, she held her smile as if her statement had been nothing more than casual truth. Nearby, a group of boys noticed the exchange and chuckled among themselves. They commented loudly about how nice Hasegawa was, clearly impressed by her willingness to help. Yuta, however, was less convinced. In the back of his mind, a quiet suspicion grew. What exactly was she trying to accomplish? The afternoon dragged on. Cleaning up the school grounds was exhausting work, and by the time they were finished, even Hasegawa felt the weight of fatigue in her limbs. She stretched her shoulders and sighed dramatically. lamenting how tired she was. But her mind wasn't on her aching muscles. She was frustrated for an entirely different reason. Despite all her attempts, Yuta had not let slip a single piece of information about Raya-sama. That, to her, was the real disappointment of the day. She reminded herself that her ultimate goal required patience. The path to friendship, she realized, was going to be a long one. But if she truly wanted to get closer to Yuta and eventually uncover the details about Raya-sama, she needed to play the long game. Using the last failed attempt as a reference, she decided it was time to put her next plan into action, something she privately called Operation Friendship. Her moment of strategic determination was cut short when she reached into her pocket and froze. Something was missing. Her fingers brushed against empty fabric, searching again, but still found nothing. Panic began to rise. That item wasn't just any trinket. It was her Raya-sama memento bookmark. She always kept it with her, treating it almost like a good luck charm. The reality of losing it hit her hard. She whispered in disbelief, trying to recall the last time she'd seen it. Without that bookmark, she felt strangely incomplete, as if a piece of her devotion had vanished. Inwardly, she begged forgiveness from Raya-sama himself, apologizing for being so careless with something so precious. When she mentioned her loss, Yuta's friends overheard. Without hesitation, they offered to help her search for it. Before she could fully respond, they had already volunteered themselves, and Yuta, into the mission. He protested immediately, but his words were brushed aside. They insisted on splitting into groups to cover more ground, and somehow he found himself roped into the search despite his reluctance. They scoured the school for clues. Classrooms, hallways, even the rooftop. Nothing turned up. The heat made the search even more draining, and Yuta eventually asked what exactly they were looking for. Hasegawa explained that it was a bookmark with a pressed sakura petal inside, a token that Raya-sama had given to her. That explanation made Yuta pause. He considered the timing of her sudden friendliness toward him and connected the dots. So that was it. She had been getting close to him because of this connection to his brother. But when he voiced the thought, she denied it outright. He wasn't convinced, yet he let the conversation continue. Curious, he asked how she had received such a gift from his brother, since it was rare for Raya-sama to give anything personal. Hasegawa's cheeks warmed as she explained. It had happened one afternoon when a sakura petal landed on her head. Raya-sama had brushed it off for her, and in that moment, she decided to preserve it. She pressed it into a bookmark herself. Yuta listened, raising an eyebrow at the phrasing. In his mind, the idea that Raya-sama had given her the petal seemed exaggerated. Still, he kept the thought to himself. The search carried on until they reached the rooftop again. The wind tugged at Hasegawa's hair as she scanned the floor, muttering about how important the bookmark was to her. She imagined all the sentimental value wrapped up in that one small object. And then, unexpectedly, Yuta found it, not in a classroom or tucked in a corner, but in the trash. She was stunned when he handed it back to her. For a brief moment, her relief was overwhelming, but it was quickly followed by something else, realization. She had been using him. Yuta's friend had once mentioned that girls had taken advantage of him for years, ever since childhood, because of his connection to Raya-sama. That was why he didn't trust women. And yet, despite knowing this, Yuta had helped her without hesitation. His friend explained it best. When someone was in trouble, Yuta couldn't help but lend a hand. He was like a walking contradiction, wary of people, yet unable to turn his back when they needed him. Hasegawa's guilt deepened. She clutched the bookmark tightly and looked at him with newfound sincerity. She apologized for earlier for dragging him into the search and for her hidden motives. She promised she wouldn't manipulate him again, adding that he was actually a kind person. Then, in a burst of determination, she declared that they should be friends. Yuta's answer was blunt and immediate. No. The refusal sparked an instant argument. Hasegawa groaned dramatically, accusing him of ruining what had been a wholesome moment. She called him stingy, then questioned whether he'd always been this unhinged. But she quickly added that maybe he should show that side of himself more often. It could make him more popular with girls, not at Raya-sama's level, of course, but still. Yuta frowned at the backhanded compliment, asking why she kept insulting him every few seconds. He insisted it didn't matter anyway. In his view, all girls ever did was use him. He even pointed out that she had done exactly that. She shot back, telling him to shut up and reminding him that she'd already said she wouldn't do it anymore. Then, almost as an afterthought, she asked if that included Izumi as well. The question caught him off guard. Izumi, he explained, was different. She was a total mystery. That simple statement made Hasegawa pause. Her eyes narrowed, the gears in her mind already turning. A mystery was she. That could only mean one thing in her mind. Another connection to Raya-sama worth investigating. The day ended with that lingering thought. For Yuta, it had been yet another exhausting, confusing encounter in a long list of chaotic moments. For Hasegawa, it was a new lead, a new path to pursue in her ongoing mission. Operation Friendship might have taken an unexpected turn, but as far as she was concerned, the game was far from over. Yuta stared at the small figure in his hands, unsure what it was. Izumi told him it was called Bunno Motivation. He had never heard of it before and assumed it was from Lazydog, but Izumi shook her head. She explained she had been aiming for a Lazydog prize and rolled the gacha machine 5 times, each time getting the exact same one. After the 5th identical pull, she decided to stop. Yuta thought she was the type who knew when to quit. Izumi commented that 5 tries were already deep enough into the gacha hole. Somehow, after giving up on her original target, she ended up with Bunno Motivation instead. Yuta admitted to himself he hadn't really wanted the figure, but holding it still made him feel a little happy. He noticed it belonged to a series called Lazy Bunch and was surprised to see how many characters were in the set. He remarked that pulling the same thing 5 times in a row was almost like having a strange superpower. Deciding to try his own luck, he reached for the gacha machine. Then he stopped, wondering why he was even doing it. He didn't need it and tried to push the thought away. The next day, Izumi's reaction was immediate. She looked at him in disbelief, her eyes wide, completely stunned. She demanded to know how it had happened. Yuta had no answer, standing there unsure why she was so shocked. The sports festival loomed just around the corner, and the day had been entirely devoted to practice. The morning sun had risen bright and clear, casting a golden shimmer across the school grounds. Excitement buzzed faintly in the air, mingling with the occasional shouts of students calling out to teammates and the rhythmic thud of sneakers on the track. Among the clusters of students scattered across the field, Yuta stood out without even trying. His friends, who had been keeping an eye on the practice heats, couldn't hide their astonishment. They spoke in quick, animated voices about his speed, remarking that his victory during the trial runs had been decisive, almost effortless. Even during breaks, the calm presence of Hoju seemed to draw eyes. There was something about him, his posture, the way he carried himself, that felt composed and quietly dignified. While others wiped sweat from their brows or slouched in exhaustion, Hoju sat with an air of unhurried grace, his clothes neat, his expression untroubled, as if the heat of the day had no power over him. Yuta noticed where Hoju had chosen to rest, a small patch of ground near the corner of the practice area. The spot was not shaded, and the air seemed warmer there, which puzzled Yuta. It wasn't the kind of place most people would willingly stay for long. Curiosity got the better of him, and he wondered why Hoju hadn't simply moved somewhere cooler. When asked, Hoju acknowledged the heat with a small nod but explained that the better shaded area nearby was filled with delicate flowers, and stepping over them would damage them. Moving, in his eyes, wasn't worth that harm. The reasoning struck Yuta unexpectedly. He had never pictured Hoju as someone who paid such close attention to small details in the environment, much less to things like flowers. It was a quiet kind of thoughtfulness, the kind that didn't draw attention to itself. Hoju, as if brushing the moment aside, shifted the topic and remarked casually on Yuta's speed. The compliment seemed straightforward, but Yuta's answer was modest. He admitted he enjoyed running, though his tone lacked the kind of pride one might expect. Their conversation was interrupted before it could go further when Hasegawa appeared. Her voice carried across the track as she called out to Yuta, waving one arm with determined energy. She wasted no time explaining the purpose of her approach. A mixed-grade relay was being organized for the festival, and she wanted Yuta to join. Her gaze and tone left little room for negotiation. Yuta's eyes fell briefly on the large, chunky case she wore around her neck like a pendant. She caught his look and explained that she had started wearing it like that for convenience. After a past incident, she'd decided this was the safest way to keep it from being misplaced. She told him, almost cheerfully, that the decision for him to join the relay had already been made, with the entire class agreeing on it. Yuta was a little stunned. This had all been decided without a word to him, but seeing no real reason to refuse, he agreed to take part. Not far from them, a group of girls was talking in hushed but excited tones. They had heard that Rei-sama would also be running in the relay, and the news sent a ripple of energy through the crowd. It didn't seem to matter which team he would be on. They were determined to cheer for him regardless. Hasegawa, noticing Yuta's reaction, mentioned that this could turn into a sibling showdown. The thought made Yuta uneasy, and he dismissed it outright, refusing to show any interest. She called after him teasingly, using the words brother-in-law with a playful lilt, but he only sighed. It was yet another time he had responded to her antics in the same predictable way. Inwardly, however, he admitted the truth. His only rival had ever been his older brother. The thought brought with it a vivid memory from childhood. He saw himself again as a young boy, standing at the edge of a schoolyard track, heart pounding from exertion. His brother's voice came to him clearly, praising his speed after a close race, while Yuta, still breathing heavily, vowed that next time he would win. But next time had never truly arrived. His older brother had always been exceptional, able to excel at anything he tried. Yuta, by contrast, had come to see himself as plain, lacking the brilliance that seemed to come naturally to his sibling. He could not recall the exact moment he had stopped trying to be first, but somewhere along the way he had simply accepted the gap between them. In school, praise for his brother had been constant, spoken by classmates, teachers, even their family. When Yuta himself failed to come out on top, people offered gentle, almost pitying encouragements. Phrases like, "maybe next time," or "you tried your best." At some point, those words stopped motivating him. They became reminders of his place in the shadow cast by his brother's success. Eventually, he told himself it was fine not to compete at all. Back in the present, Yuta reflected bitterly on that tendency to step back before the fight even began. If there was one arena where he might actually surpass his brother, it would be in small, everyday matters, simple survival skills that had nothing to do with talent or acclaim. His thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. His brother had appeared nearby, smiling easily, asking if Yuta wanted to walk home together, just like they used to. A wave of unease washed over Yuta, not fear of losing to him, but fear of the inevitable comparisons. He quickly made an excuse about having something else to do and walked away before the conversation could continue. Eventually, he wandered to a quieter part of the grounds and settled on an empty bench. The faint buzz of distant conversation drifted over from the practice fields, and the air felt heavy with the warmth of the day. He sat there, his mind looping through the same question. Why did he keep avoiding everything? It was then that Huju appeared again, her approach quiet enough to catch him off guard. She asked if he was all right. His answer was vague, as if to deflect attention from himself. A small embarrassment lingered in his mind. He wondered if she had seen him stumble earlier. Huju glanced at the bench and commented that it was a comfortable spot. She explained, almost conversationally, that she had tricked here once before and in the moment of falling, realized the ground was unexpectedly pleasant. She pointed out how the sunlight reached them just enough to warm the skin without stifling, and how the slow turn of a fan from a nearby window sent a faint breeze their way. Yuta had to admit she was right. The combination was unexpectedly soothing. Her gaze shifted toward the commotion on the field, where preparations for the festival were still underway. She mentioned the bread-eating race, her tone carrying mild amusement. Yuta reacted with mild surprise, picturing it as a chance to eat endlessly, though she corrected his misconception quickly. Explaining the race was not nearly so indulgent. He told her she should skip it, but she explained she had already lost at rock, paper, scissors and been assigned to the beanbag toss instead. When she asked which events he would be in, he listed the 100-meter dash and the push-ball competition, adding that his brother would be participating as well. The words were out before he realized it, and he paused, questioning why he was telling her this at all. She asked why that would be a problem. In her view, no matter how complicated the relationship, he was still himself. Yuta accepted the truth in her statement, but admitted that running would inevitably invite comparisons to his brother. It was then that Huju spoke of a flower she had noticed earlier, one that had been moved from the shade into direct sunlight. In the shadow, it had been in danger of being stepped on, but now, in its new position, it had the freedom to grow fully, its true colors revealed to anyone who passed by. She wondered aloud whether the flower might thrive better in this new place, then told him with quiet certainty that he would be fine too. She had seen him running earlier, and to her, he had been shining. The words struck something deep within him. He found himself wondering why she spoke with such unwavering certainty. Why didn't she, like so many others in his life, caution him about the likelihood of failure? From just a few sentences, she had stirred something unexpected inside him, a lightness that felt almost like joy. His heart beat faster than he wanted to admit. He told himself her words didn't carry any special meaning beyond encouragement, yet he wanted to believe them. More than that, he realized he wanted to live up to them. That desire both unsettled and inspired him. There was something about her, her confidence, her way of noticing small, easily overlooked details, that left a lasting mark. He didn't have an answer for why her opinion mattered so much, but as he sat there under the soft warmth of the sun, he knew one thing with absolute clarity. He wanted to step forward and face the challenge, not just for himself, but to meet the quiet expectation she had placed in him. During club activities inside the gymnasium, the instructor noticed the team losing focus. He observed repeated mistakes, movements lacking precision, and an overall drop in discipline. His sharp tone cut through the noise, demanding their full attention. He remarked on their growing sloppiness, insisting there could be no excuses. One student attempted to defend the situation, but the instructor dismissed the interruption immediately. He made it clear there would be no justifications. His attention shifted to the sidelines, where a girl was quietly standing. He noted she seemed to be cooling off rather than participating. A sudden thought crossed his mind. Perhaps she was connected to one of the players. The possibility of her being someone's girlfriend was considered. Nearby, the boys reacted quickly, rejecting the implication. They explained she was not there for romantic reasons and identified her as the well-known, admired Hojo-san, a girl recognized for her beauty. The instructor still appeared puzzled. He wondered why someone so striking would choose to watch their practice. A quiet thought emerged among those present. Perhaps she was observing for a personal reason. In their imagination, the situation transformed into a dramatic notion, as though a hidden story titled Secret Love. "I've always had my eyes on you" was unfolding before them. Speculation spread in the group. They considered the possibility that her attention was fixed on a specific individual within their ranks. If that were the case, it became an unspoken motivation. The atmosphere shifted as the instructor encouraged the team to give their maximum effort. Inspired by the idea of impressing their unseen admirer, determination replaced fatigue and the pace of practice quickened. In another part of the gym, Yuta quietly addressed Izumi. His words carried a practical suggestion, pointing out that there was a simpler way to deal with the heat. He recommended a basic tool, imagining it would make things easier. Izumi, without directly acknowledging the remark, continued with her approach, which in turn had an unexpected effect. Through her presence and quiet actions, Izumi managed to lift the spirit of the entire volleyball squad. Inside the classroom, the students were buzzing over the sports festival. Among them, Yuta's friend commented that the girls looked stunning and cute in their cheer squad outfits. He also noticed that both of them looked charming. One of the girls showed him her outfit, and he was flustered by her actions, unable to react properly. She giggled with a faint smile, but then Yuta spoke up, saying he wasn't sure about the looks, only for his friends to interrupt him, insisting that she really liked him. He stared at the audacity of his friend, saying that in front of the beautiful and gorgeous Hojo-san. His friend suggested that they should just keep her as a cheerleader for the relay race. Yuta quickly shut him up, asserting that it would be a weird option. After that, the sports festival began, and Yuta decided to join the race solely because of her. He realized that just seeing her made his heart feel like it was about to explode. She had looked good in her school uniform earlier, but seeing her in that outfit was a completely different experience. She was absolutely charming that day. As he stood beside her, his heartbeat was loud enough for her to hear. Everyone nearby was shocked to hear his heart pounding so fast. Soon after, the first event of the sports festival began, the ball toss event. As he waited for his race, he noticed that Takamiya was busy with other preparations and that most of the girls were following his brother for a photo shoot, causing jealousy among the other girls who were standing beside him. Turning his attention to the crowd, he heard people saying that the pink team was falling behind. He noticed Hauja sitting quietly in a corner, holding numerous balls in her hands. Suddenly, she jumped and threw the balls toward the basket, smiling and exclaiming that that was how it worked. Yuta couldn't believe she actually did that when he bumped into a tall guy with a serious face, feeling scared that it might turn into a fight. He instantly backed away, apologizing and claiming it was his mistake. But the tall guy gently picked him up and placed him in a visible spot on the field, towering over him like a parent. As Yuta stood there, he spotted his mom and dad arriving at the festival. He was shocked to see them, and they explained that they had come to cheer for him and his brother. They were wonderful, loving parents, while on the other side, his older brother was busy charming the girls. His parents mentioned they came to support him because he didn't have a crowd. Yuta initially thought they were insulting him. Just then, Hauja called out to him from behind, saying that she had caught 2 balls and had tried her best. He praised her enthusiastically, but his parents misunderstood the situation and commented on how adorable and cute she looked. She introduced herself as Izumi Huju, and his parents greeted her warmly, saying it was a pleasure to meet her. They began to gossip about how Yuta was shy and nervous around girls. He tried to intervene, but they wouldn't listen. His mother remarked on how cute Hauja looked and hoped her son wasn't causing any trouble. Hauja replied that Yuta was nice and had helped her out during dangerous situations, saying he was really kind to her. His parents were shocked to hear such statements about their son for the first time. Glancing at each other, they deemed her a sweet girl and invited her to their home, placing a hand on Yuta's shoulder, saying they would be happy to have her as their guest. She agreed. Yuta couldn't comprehend what had just happened. His parents had invited a girl home. They shared their excitement for their son, reminding him that they were always there for him before leaving. Hauja commented on how nice and loving his parents were and assured him that she would be cheering for him to do his best. Meanwhile, his brother, astonished to hear that Yuta was participating in the race, felt pumped up and mentioned that the person sitting beside him said Yuta was really popular. They checked the scores of each team, and Yuta recalled saying he would win this time for sure. His brother was excited, stating that it was the first time in ages his younger brother had shown interest in competing with him, promising to try his best to impress him. However, the girl beside him expressed confusion as to why he was suddenly participating. Rhea stood up, saying he had some work to do, and left the area. As he walked away, he reflected on how he used to avoid competition with his brother but had suddenly changed. He wondered what could have brought about this transformation. Yuta was feeling increasingly nervous about the upcoming race.